So, the next question is, what is the new system we need, and how can we get there? I'll get to specifics of the new system I think we should build in a moment, but first I'll explain how we should think about the future to make it as good as we can, again using the 3 timescales. I'll go through them in reverse order, from the long term to the short term, as this helps us orient ourselves and move in the right direction. Firstly, the long term of hundreds to thousands of years. What must a successful long-term future include? It must include humanity and the rest of life on Earth flourishing in harmonious abundance. Everyone should have access to everything they need to have a fulfilling life, and the natural world should be allowed to fulfill its own nature of exuberant and resilient life. Of course, this means we need to stop having a negative environmental impact and ensure we have resilient food systems and a climate that isn't broken. But it means more than this. Electricity and the internet are both revolutionary technologies that have massively positively impacted people's lives. I think we should see them as fundamental technologies that everyone should be able to access to a reasonable degree. The internet relies on extremely complicated technology, including both a vast amount of technical information and a large amount of materials technology. Building and maintaining the servers, computers and connections we need to run the internet currently relies on vast, complex and potentially fragile global supply chains that are deeply intertwined with the current capitalist economic system that's driving the environmental crisis. And many people don't yet have access to the internet. Ensuring we enable humanity to flourish with universal internet access into the long-term future is actually a very hard problem that can be used to guide and test our thinking about how the next system should be structured and how we can get there. The next timescale is the medium term, about 30 years' time. This is a really useful timescale to think about systems change. It's far enough into the future that, as we've seen, we know there will be massive transformation of some kind between now and then. There's long enough between now and then that we have time to actively engage in ambitious, transformative work that might result in fundamentally redesigned societal systems by that point. But it's also close enough to the present that how we redesign the systems and what the new systems might look like are quite constrained by aspects of our current situation, such as our technological development and our culture. It's also the time frame of our working lives. If a better civilization is built over the next 30 years, we are the ones who will build it. Finally, there is the short-term timescale. This is the timescale on which we can actually do the work. We will, of course, still be doing work in 10 or 20 years' time, but from the perspective of those future versions of ourselves, it will still be the short term that we are working in. In the current situation, there is actually a key point to make about the intermediate period of 10 to 20 years' time. We can be fairly certain that sometime in that period, climate change will be massively disruptive. We are going to go through a period of crisis, perhaps many periods of crisis. This is a worrying prospect, and is something we need to account for in our planning, but in some ways it actually opens new possibilities. It's often said that crises can provide opportunities. As climate change worsens and causes major problems, many people who are currently strongly attached to the current system will realize it needs to change. Deeply held beliefs will have to be cast aside, and what replaces them is an open question. This means that in the next decades, much more than in previous decades, there will be opportunities to reshape cultural norms about what is and isn't acceptable behaviour, and to some extent to change the moral basis of society. This massively expands the range of possibilities of what the medium-term future might look like, including opening the door to a radically better civilization. But it also means society could go in a terrible direction. When the crises hit, we need to be ready.